Hey, Photoshop's always seemed super daunting to me when I was first starting out. There's 1,000 different ways to do the same thing. There's a million different things that you can even do in the first place. So how do you know where to start? How do you know what to approach and which direction to go? So in this video, I want to show you my process, my workflow on how I approach images and give them back to my clients, what it is that I do to them. And hopefully you can pick up a few different tips and tricks for yourselves that you can bring back to your own photography. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, so welcome back. My name is Sergio and I'm a commercial photographer here in Victoria, BC. And you might have seen this shot in last week's video on the Capture One. Today we're going to go one step further. We're going to take it into Photoshop and see what else I can do to it. I also have a food photo shoot and a portrait from the same shoot as well. So we're going to go into those in the end of the video. So if you remember from the last video, I mentioned that this was before we actually had a flash for the front of the vehicle. And by the time I did have the flash on the front of the vehicle, it was creating this little annoying spot at the front of the shot, which was expected. My friend was just holding it in their hands. This was, again, like I said, very impromptu. However, what I did like of the shot is how the front cab looks in the truck. So what we can do from the other shot, we're going to take that cab, we're going to try to put it on top of the window over here and try to get a little bit more dynamic shot out of this. Let's just duplicate our first background. We're going to take this one, we're going to lower that opacity, and we're just going to place it right above our actual other one here. Really just want the interior to line up a little bit better. There we go. It's just for that seat there. So obviously we're changing the direction of the seat a little bit. And on the windshield down over here, we've got a little bit of a ghosting. So that's not what we want, but we'll see what we can do here. So now if we take our brush here and just do like a nice little soft brush, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of finessing here around the windshield. I also remove some opacity here. There we go. Make it a little bit darker. I just want to be able to see that logo on the interior. I feel like it was a wasted opportunity. Boom. You know, I don't want to be too drastic. If it looks edited, it probably went too far. So let's move on to the next one here. I'm pretty happy with how it looks straight out of, I guess, color grading. The only thing that really bothers me, I guess we can do is well, not really bothers me, but I don't like the fingerprint we've got here on the golden pizza wheel. I think we can do a little bit better with the skin over here. We kind of get rid of some of the cracks and the redness on the skin. For both these situations, for both of these little problem areas, we're going to go ahead and open up my, I want to say 10, maybe even 12-year-old action that I still use. So shout out to Flern, A.K. Nacer, Aaron Nace. Thank you so much for all of these wonderful years of saving me time and energy. We're going to pull up the his frequency separation action over here, and that just kind of gives us access basically to just the texture and then just the colors of a certain shot. And I remember when I first discovered this, or when I first found this YouTube rabbit hole of how to do this part of editing, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is how the pros do the thing. This is how it's done. I remember it being super revolutionary when I first found out. But I mean, I wasn't wrong. I'm still doing it to this day. I'm still using the same program or the same action to this day. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. What I want to do here is just remove this dark oil stain, essentially make it kind of like the color of the rest of what we've got over here. And there are multiple ways that you can do this. Again, 1,000 ways to skin a cat. But what you usually don't want to do is kind of select and then just blur everything. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spot heal tool, and I'm going to use, essentially, I'm going to do a spot healing of just the color layer. I know that I just want to get rid of this over here, so I'm going to sample here. Now it looks a lot more realistic than when we just kind of blur out that whole area. It's a lot more tedious and it's a lot longer. I've often said that about Photoshop. It's depends, you can get whatever you want. It just depends how long you want to spend in the program. I don't usually edit it with in between like this, but it does help to showcase my point of what it is that we're actually doing here. So this line here has a bit in the color and in the texture. So we're going to kind of get rid of it this way. And now if we go back into the color, do the same thing over here, like so. Do a bit better than that. There we go. And now if I open it back up, we just removed it, and it looks a lot more realistic than if we do it any other way. Here, I can go even a bit further here. I don't think it's that nice, to be honest with you. So here, let's just go a little bit further. It's a pretty perfect looking wheel. Obviously, if we went a little bit further and it was super messy and that was point of the shot, that's cool, but I just wanted this to look pretty clean and not distracting and not look like there was a big finger just randomly in the shot here. So I think that looks pretty good. Now, if we go to the skin, we can do the, you know, selecting, which is, I kind of like how I used to do this part anyway. So that's why I say like, don't do this, because I used to do it like this. But essentially, yeah, if you like just kind of Gaussian blur all of the skin, yeah, it's like a million times quicker, but it won't look as real even if you go back in and you dodge and burn properly. Like, it still just looks a lot more blurred out. There's a lot more tiny little nuances in the skin that we're kind of washing over by doing it this way. So instead, we're going to do all that, but we're going to do it with spot healing in the color in the color layer instead. If we go over here and we see this like little red dot, or like reddening of the skin, boom, we just remove it just like that. I've never actually noticed that I do this, but I was on a phone call with my parents recently, and my mom was like, "You say boom a lot," and I guess I didn't realize, and I just said it just there, and now I hear it. So I guess I do say it. It's my emerald catchphrase. You know what I mean? Bam, bam, bam. So I didn't, Matt. Actually, shout out to my mom who's on a bus circling around Montreal right now. You're as famous as all the people you've always wanted to be as famous as. This is always just a matter of how far do you want to go, how long do you want to take. I've gotten to a point where I can kind of see both layers when I'm just looking at it, even though they're together. But it does help sometimes, especially when you're first starting out, if you want to just draw on the texture layer and then only keep the texture layer visible so you know what you're actually looking at. It's kind of like doing just a regular spot healing, but now you have to do it in 2 different layers. So you have to do it twice, essentially. Usually in the color and in the texture. Actually, one of the things I definitely didn't know when I was first starting out, like, there's a lot more things that are in the texture layer that aren't actually in a color layer. And they look like they're colors, but they're not. They're really just a piece of texture. Your eye gets trained over time to know which is which. You see here the nothing against a real human being with actual working hands, but this is why hand models are a thing. This is why I stopped hand modeling my own shoots as well, because I was tired of editing my cuticles and my nails, and goodness, it's like when you're zoomed in to 400%, it's like you see everything. If you change something at 400%, it's not going to make the shot magically better. But if I know the shot is going to be used in advertising, or is going to be blown up, or is going to be seen up close, or it's going to be cropped into, I try to make sure that it's as good as possible all around. And this is kind of why we often get editors or retouchers or people that can help us do these kinds of like tedious little tasks. Like right now, this looks not so great. And I'm not going to lie, I did already edit this and deliver it back to the client. I'm faking it for YouTube right now. So I might just swap in the final edited shot that I have with the magic of editing, so I don't have to actually re-edit all of this because it's kind of tedious. But this is essentially what it is that I got to do, is once in the texture layer, once in the color layer, and then once we have a good general flat line, what we'll go through after is I open up my dodge and burn action, I pull it in. It works like 1 in 5 times for some reason. It's like, it depends where it's starting from, how many layers already are in the shot. Essentially, it just makes 6 gray layers that are filled with soft light, or they use the soft light blending mode. The reason for that is because I will draw on one, and then I use the blend diff underlying layer is gray, and that's why I have it on top of a neutral gray layer. So let's just say I was happy with the frequency separation. Now I can go in here, and now I open up my dodge and burn. This is going to be the dodge to make it brighter, and the burn makes it darker. So D for B is B for D. That's how I've always remembered it. Let's go here to midtones, and we're going to go like this. There's a lot of like memorizing that I had to do back in like the biology and pharmacy and these kinds of like those kinds of programs and things that I had to do. And a lot of them I would always do some kind of alphabetical or reverse alphabetical order or whatever. So I've always looked for those kinds of patterns. And when I was first learning film photography and I was dodging and burning in the dark room, or in the dark room with an enlarger, I had to remember which one is dodge, which one is burn, and dodge is the brighter one and burn is the darker one. So it's kind of like the opposite alphabetical is how I would have remembered myself doing that in college. Here we can burn in a little bit, and obviously we're going to blend this, and we're not going to keep it this dark. This is just to see what we got. There we go. So now get a shot decently like this. If I open up just those things, I'm going to blur this a little bit, give it a bit so I can remove the brush strokes so it looks a little bit more natural. Go a bit further. And now, what I was saying about the blend diff is we're going to double click that layer, and I'm going to go underlying layer. I'm going to press Alt or Control or Option. Yeah, Option, sorry. And basically grab the inner one and pull up the... This is basically removing the highlights that are in the shadows. So that would have been me drawing at the wrong place, essentially. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to remove them, most of them at the very least, and do the exact opposite here for the shadows. So I'll take the shadows out of what should have been a highlight. So what was brighter than gray, the shadows will be removed from, if that makes any sense. So now we can go ahead and make that a little bit less intense. Boom, that's how we get our dodge and burn look on top of a flattened frequency separation layer. So basically with frequency separation, I go to try to flatten the image as much as possible, keep it a little bit, not 2D, but more 2D. And then with frequency with dodge and burn afterwards, we go in and re-add that contrast where we want it, the highlights where we want them, and the shadows where we want them. Let's move on to the next shot. All right, so for our last shot, we've got Andy, the pizza man himself. We've got the chef of the previous pizza. And the main problem area I've got with this shot here is that his eyes have sunken in a little bit dark. And I just think that the shot's a little bit too stiff. I like a lot of motion in my images. I like creating the environment in the shot. And when we were there, like we did this in like 30, no, not even. We did this in like 15 minutes, like in and out of the store. My assistant Charlie, who was holding the flash in his hands with an umbrella on it, and he was just basically pointing and moving with me and with the with our talent here. And there was a lot of like, basically it was really run and gun, and he was actually just making a pizza, so we had to be hidden in the kitchen trying to shoot while it was actually happening. Honestly, like it did maybe 10 minutes where like it was really just in and out. We have like, I think 12 frames from this shoot, from this placement. This is one of the winners that I quite liked, but I would have liked to have maybe a slower shutter speed where I could have included a bit of random, but that usually needs a bit more effort, a bit more tries, so more time, and I wanted to make sure we get a working shot. So at the very least, what we're going to do is we're going to put that blur, but we're going to put it in Photoshop instead, and see if we can create a little bit of a more dynamic look to the shot here. So let's just duplicate our background. We're going to select the subject. And let's see what it does. It did a pretty good job. I'm going to add a little bit more. Just make sure it selects all of him. And it doesn't need to be too perfect because we're going to go back in and on top of a mask. But for the time being, let's just try to make it as good as possible. Now, so I'm going to invert that selection. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to filter, and then I'm going to go to blur. We're going to go to path blur. And now we're just going to draw basically a path of the blur where the camera would have been shaking, usually in the direction of our subject to give it that motion. I'm going to keep that speed down and increase the taper a little bit so we can get a bit of a nicer edge. So the effect is a bit more reduced this way. Go, I think that looks pretty okay. There we go. I'm gonna hit OK, gonna make it do its magic. Now I can just go ahead and create a mask of just that layer, go in around the edge and make sure that it's not kind of like affecting any weird part of the image like here in the glasses. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna paint away with black. Let's increase the opacity here. There we go. See, like this, I don't really mind because it's kind of like giving us like it's the movement of the shot, and it just brings him into the background a little bit, so that I don't mind. As much as possible, we try to get it right in camera, and it saves us all this time in Photoshop, and it can make for a much more realistic look, and it's much more repeatable, and it's something that we can actually shoot, you know, a whole series around the same look if we can actually do it in camera rather than having to rely on Photoshop for every single shot. But for like a one-off like this, it's not too much of an issue. Voila. There we go. Now I can just work my way around my subject and make sure that I get like this kind of dreamy like movement look in the shot while it kind of looks like the camera was following the subject that's actually moving. This effect's maybe a little bit more dramatic here on Photoshop, but as you know, I'm just recreating these shots. I've already edited them, I've already submitted them, so it might look a little bit different in the final. But I'm pretty happy with this. This looks all right. Yeah, there we go. It just kind of blurs out the background a little bit, and it gives us a little bit more of a separation. This is shot at like f8 or f11 or something like that, so like everything is in focus, especially at like a 24 mil. it's hard to get any kind of separation from the background. So this is one way to do it. We can do it with lighting, we can do it with composition, but today we're doing it with, we're doing it with a bit of both of those things as well, but we're also doing it with a little bit of Photoshop magic. And just before we wrap here, we're just going to go ahead and add another little dodge and burn group. Hey, there we go. See, this time it worked for some reason. See, all those layers are there. But we're just going to draw with our dodge, and we're going to, see, I feel like normally I would have maybe like removed all of these specks, but I think this is just flour, which would make sense in the context of Andy the Pizza Man. So we're going to go ahead here and just brighten using the dodge tool. I feel like it looks usually more realistic by doing it this way than trying to increase the exposure on an image or something like that, or trying to raise the shadows. This usually looks a little bit more realistic. It doesn't look realistic yet, but let me use blend diff. And now we can remove the highlights from the different parts of the shadows that I don't want them in, and from the highlights as well, because I didn't want them on those cheeks anyway. So now, whew, looks a little bit more real, but still a lot brighter than it was. I can bring it down a bit, actually. There we go. And now we can see a little bit into his eyes over there. Perfect. There we go. So I'm happy with how that turned out. I hope you picked up a few little tricks. If you did, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you enjoyed from this video. If you want more of these, let me know. I'll do a few more of these as well. This is always fun. This is work that I genuinely need to do anyway. So if you're interested in seeing the work that I do, then maybe we can do more of these like this as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in a couple days. Later.